A new study looked into the number of children in the United States who live in homes that have loaded and unlocked guns. And unfortunately, according to this study, an estimated 4.6 million American children reside in a household where at least one gun is kept loaded and unlocked. So a federal analysis of school shootings released in 2004 found that 65% of perpetrators used a gun owned by a relative. Now that's an old analysis, obviously it's from 2004, but I would love to see some researchers do analysis into this issue today, because we do have a lot of school shootings happening. They've increased in terms of how often they happen throughout a year. And so oftentimes when we talk about gun control, people think that the discussion is about either extreme of the spectrum, but in reality, there are other issues that we need to talk about. For instance, if you are a law-abiding citizen who does have guns and you've purchased them legally, you should, by law, be forced to keep them locked and unloaded. So anyway.
Well, the main reason that that's not happening is because people have been taught that you're in mortal danger at all times. So they're in such a panic over that that they've got their gun loaded and ready to go. Because at any moment, a Muslim could bust in and enforce Sharia law on your family, right? And the dangerous immigrants are coming, and MS-13 and all the others are about to rampage your house, right? So that's why they have it. But the reality is, of course, you're far, far, far more likely to get killed by that loaded gun in your house, or someone in your family is, than some sort of intruder comes in and you heroically save your family. I know that's in all your fantasies, right? But that almost never happens. But accidental shootings, suicides happen all the time, and homicides too. You get mad at one another, boom, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that, and you wouldn't have done that if there wasn't a gun.
Right, and also when it comes to teenagers, one of the leading causes of death is suicide by gun. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you are a parent with a weapon at home. And you're completely right, Cenk, about how the perception of guns has changed. The reason for purchasing guns has changed. And that has been a very conscious effort by the NRA. And I'm saying it's a conscious effort because you can see for yourselves in the types of ads that they put out there where they fearmonger, right? There's a threat around every corner. You need to protect yourself. There's criminals everywhere. And so people get scared, understandably so. Those commercials are terrifying. Now, let's move on to, let's go to graphic 31. So polls show that over the past 2 decades, Americans have come to believe that gun ownership increases public safety and that a home with guns in it is more secure, right? But that's not the case. In fact, research shows the exact opposite. To the contrary, a 2014 review of existing research published in the Annals of Internal Medicine found that access to guns doubles the risk of homicide and triples the risk of suicide.
So I'm going to give more numbers here, but let's just hold and let that one sink in. It doubles the chance of a homicide if you have the gun inside your house. You're not protecting yourself from a homicide. You're making it twice as likely, okay? And suicides go up 3 times as much. So overall, the chance of someone in your house dying because you've got a gun in the house is way higher than the chances of you heroically protecting your family with that gun and saving lives. It's just not true. Now, you've gotten that propaganda. Why? Because then gun manufacturers profit off of that propaganda. They want you to be scared all the time. That is why, and by the way, it has been very clever, not just advertising, but going all over TV, people like going on Fox News, and yes, of course, CNN playing the both sides, etc., and all these so-called experts that are right-wingers going, guns are great, and everybody's coming, fear, 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 fear. And most importantly, they paid off the politicians. So you cannot pass laws against them, but also, those are all basically paid agents. They're all over television doing ads for gun manufacturers about how you should be scared and the most important thing in the world is to have a gun. So are we surprised that after a couple of decades of that propaganda, a lot more people have loaded, unlocked guns because they're afraid that anybody's going to come in at any moment, and it leads to doubling of homicides, tripling of suicides.
Yeah.
In fact, let me give you numbers. Let's go to graphic 37 here. The number of accidental firearm deaths in the US between 2006 and 2016, that's an 11-year period, is 6,885 people. So about 600 people a year die from accidents. Are 600 people's lives saved by a heroic person who grabbed a gun and shot an intruder at the last second? That might happen in a Clint Eastwood movie, and it might happen very infrequently in the country. I saw some hilarious propaganda paid for by gun manufacturers. Oh no, it happens millions of times a year. Millions of times a year, I know. Make my day. No, your poor kids grab the guns and they shoot you, or they shoot other kids with, unfortunately, one that just happened. So suicides, this is the one that's the one that is least talked about. Get a load of this. For the year 2015, this is an average year, 22,018 suicides by gun, by firearms, okay? Now, here are some devastating facts. Approximately 90% of people who attempt suicide with a gun will die. Now you might think that's normal. Well, don't 90% of people who try to commit suicide die? No. In contrast, over 90% of those who attempt suicide by other methods will live, and they are unlikely to attempt suicide again. In fact, only 1 out of 25, that's 4% of people who try to commit suicide, try again and succeed. So once they fail the first time, they almost never go back to doing it. But if they're using a gun, they don't fail. 9 out of 10 times they die. If they don't use a gun, 9 out of 10 times they live. So that leads to tens of thousands of deaths every year because you thought you were being safe and you had a gun in the house.
So let's talk a little bit about cap laws, because those are the laws that ensure that adults do keep their guns locked away. Look, okay, let's put laws away for a second and just talk as rational human beings. If you are an adult with guns in your home, just lock them in a safe place where your kids don't have access to them. I'm not telling anyone to take your guns away. I'm not telling anyone to ban all guns. Just be a responsible person. Like, you love your kids. I don't know your kids, but I love your kids too. I don't want them to die by accident, and it happens far too often. Just lock your gun away. All right, with that said, so researchers at the RAND Corporation looked into these cap laws. These are the laws that would have severe punishments for parents or adults who don't keep their guns secured and unlocked. Secured and unloaded. And what they found was that imposing these types of criminal liability on adults who allow their firearms to fall into kids' hands have consistently reduced both firearm suicides and accidental shootings among young people. But guess what? Even though these laws don't take guns away from anyone, it just tells you, hey, be a responsible person and store them in a safe place. The NRA is against these laws. Why? Why are you against these laws? What is wrong with you?
And the reason is, the more people, look, you think, a lot of people get the first part, but not a lot of people get the second part. So the first part is, you know that the NRA wants guns everywhere. So if you try to limit guns, they fight back with great vigor. But this doesn't limit guns. So this leads to the second part. When there are deaths from those guns, that is not a downside for the NRA. That's an upside. Now, I know that they're going to get their feelings hurt over that. So let me explain why. Because when there's more stories about more people dying from guns, what happens? More fear. More fear leads to higher gun sales. So for you, your kid dying because you accidentally left your gun available to them and loaded, that is a tragedy of the worst proportions. For them, once that news gets out there, and or someone in your family dies, or there's a mass shooting, oh, wonderful, fear for everyone. And what do? They have their bought politicians go out there and go, we should have more guns in the schools. And you all should have guns, and everybody should have guns. Why? Because they got to increase gun sales. So it's one thing when you're trying to increase the sales of sneakers or hamburgers, but when you're trying to increase the sales of guns, and you'll throw on top of that, we let them buy our politicians. Well, this is what's going to happen. This is because their product doesn't make your feet feel more comfortable. It doesn't feed you. It kills you.
Yep. And there are clearly ramifications to this. A recent story, just today, we found out that a 2-year-old boy in Virginia was shot and killed on accident by his 4-year-old brother. The 4-year-old thought that the loaded gun was a toy. And, of course, the parents are distraught about this. I wish that they had kept the gun in a secure place where a 4-year-old wouldn't have access to it. But I also find it interesting how people have reacted to that story. One neighbor said the following: "There's no way they would leave a loaded gun out. They're good people, good Christians, good people. They take care of their children and make sure they have everything they need. I know this is going to be tragic to them." Being a good Christian has nothing to do with whether or not someone keeps a gun in a secure place. Please, for the love of God, just keep your guns in a place locked where your kids don't have access to them. You could save your children's lives, and you could also save a lot of other people's lives.
Look, I don't want to say anything about the parents in that case because it's too heartbreaking to even discuss with the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old, right? But for the neighbor, no, you've been brainwashed. You literally are saying the opposite of what happened. You say they would never do that, except they just did that. And you're saying good people don't do that, except your neighbors, who I'm sure are good people, did do that. Why? Because the NRA and all the propaganda convinced you that everyone is a great, responsible gun owner. I have never seen anyone come on television from the right wing or the NRA and say there's a lot of irresponsible gun owners. They always talk about, no, I'm a responsible gun owner and everybody I know is a responsible gun owner, blah, 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 blah. And the reality is, no, we're humans.
That's right.
We make mistakes all the time, especially if we're afraid. And how many times have you forgotten your keys? Oops, I forgot them there, I didn't realize it. Well, if you have a gun and it's loaded, oops, I forgot the gun, oh no. It doesn't mean you're not a good Christian and you're not a good person. It's that we're humans. So we have to drill it into everybody's head. If you got a gun, you cannot leave it loaded. I don't care who you think is coming. You cannot leave it out there unlocked and loaded. But a lot of people are so afraid, and they've been taught to be afraid, that they leave that stuff around in a panic, and that's when tragedy strikes. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.